And yeah, take it away.
Excellent. So this afternoon, Jana is going to be talking about the work that she's doing for her master's. So for anyone that doesn't know, Jana's doing a master's by research, which is supervised by Liv, and she's looking at different types of screen change, population level interventions to reduce alcohol consumption. So I'll pass over to you, Jana.
Thank you. Let me just figure out, I guess. Yeah, that should do. Where is my pen? Yeah. So today I'm going to be talking about choice architecture interventions to reduce alcohol consumption. And I'm pretty sure that most of you know this, but just in case, alcohol consumption is associated with over 200 health conditions, including heart disease, stroke, and cancer, and about 3.3 million deaths occur each year due to alcohol. It's among the top 5 risk factors for disease globally, and more than 500,000 people are alcohol dependent in England alone. And if you look in the right, is just the assessment, the comparison of different drugs, both legal and illegal, in terms of their harm to users and others. And as you can see, alcohol came out as the most harmful one. So it's important to reduce alcohol consumption, and there are many, many ways in which this can be done, and these are just some of them. So, for example, you can make alcohol more expensive so that people think twice before spending money on alcohol. You can also increase awareness by telling people about all the risks associated with alcohol consumption. You can stop adverts appealing to younger audience so that they don't associate drinking alcohol with something that cool. Or you can use choice architecture interventions, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So what are choice architecture interventions? The other term is also nudge interventions or nudging. And basically, these interventions attempt to prompt healthier behavior by affecting people's choices. And they do this by changing the microenvironments in which a given behavior occurs. So in terms of alcohol, people normally drink in bars or pubs. So if you tackle some parts of the environment within the bars, you can then reduce alcohol consumption. That's the idea behind it. So the good thing about these interventions is that they don't force or prohibit any action on the part of the individual, unlike other interventions, but rather they rely on automatic psychological processes of individuals, leading to positive impact regardless of individual differences. They allow for behavior to be influenced at the populational level without the need for legislation at the national level. And these are just some examples. So for example, you can change the music within a bar to reduce alcohol consumption. There is evidence that louder music is associated with increased drinking rates, and maybe introducing some sort of a threshold in bars, like music volume threshold, would lead to the overall reduction of alcohol consumption. You can also introduce a unified glass shape, because there is evidence from the studies conducted in TARG that people tend to drink beer slower from straight glasses compared to curved glasses. And the assumption is maybe that it's just more difficult for them to estimate how much is left from the curved glass, so they tend to drink faster because of that. Or you can also introduce markings on the glasses, because people tend to slow down their drinking consumption if there are detailed volume markings on the glass. So that brings us to what exactly my studies are about. There are 2 of them. I'm going to talk about the first one, and then first one first and second one second. So the first one is the impact of sitting versus standing on the rate of alcohol consumption, and it's a pilot and feasibility study. And the second one is the impact of alcohol-free drink availability and calorie information on drink selection, and this is an online study. So the first one, We've run some, we are still running it with people from TARG and also Cambridge University. And the how do you call it? The symbol there, I'll keep it on the slide so that everyone knows what study I'm talking about. So a bit of a background. There is some evidence that improving consumers' comfort may facilitate reduced alcohol consumption. For example, in California, approximately 1 in 6 venues change their physical environment to move from restaurant to bar in the evening to increase alcohol sales. And they do it by removing all the tables and the chairs and then reducing the lighting. Also, lack of seating can lead to discomfort and consequently to increased drinking rates and drunkenness, but there are currently no studies that investigated it. So that's the design of our study, and I'll go through each part of it. So 48 pairs of regular alcohol drinkers will be recruited and randomly assigned to one of the 4 conditions, and these 4 conditions are present on the slide. So there is sitting with a table, standing with a table, sitting without a table, and standing without a table. In all conditions, participants attend the session in pairs, and they attended with someone they know. So we don't actually assign 2 people to the same session. They have to bring someone they know. And the reason behind it is, first of all, because people rarely drink alone, and we wanted to make it more realistic. And secondly, is to conceal the true purpose of the study, because we tell participants that what we look at is the effects of alcohol on sociability. Also, we run sessions in a cafe to also increase the ecological validity, because there are some noises on the background, which is more real to what the bar experience is compared to a lab. So in each session, participants are asked to drink a pint of, not a pint, 330 milliliters of beer while talking to each other. And they do it in one of the 4 settings, and we video record them. So the primary objective is to estimate the standard deviation of the primary outcome measure, to then use these results for sample size calculation for a future study. And the outcome measure is total drinking time in minutes for each individual participant. So we're going to analyze data for each individual rather than a pair. But also, we estimate the intra-class correlation coefficient between individuals within a pair using a one-way ANOVA. Secondary objectives are to assess the feasibility of the study and fidelity of the protocol. And we'll assess the feasibility by recording recruitment rates, retention rates, and the number of incomplete pairs that were unable to take part. So, for example, when only 1 person from a pair came to the study, and obviously they can't take part. And we'll assess the fidelity of protocol by coding the number of protocol breaches using the camera footage that we get. And just an example of what kind of breaches we're talking about is if, for example, a participant is assigned to a condition in which the table is present, but they don't actually use it, or if they are allocated to a condition in which they have chairs to sit down, but they end up standing. So what the current situation is with the study. We were halfway through data collection when the study got suspended as a result of the outbreak of COVID-19. It is sadly unlikely to resume during my master's, but if resumed, there have to be some sort of changes, because obviously not only we test participants in pairs, we also do it in the public place. So one potential solution is testing participants still in pairs, just so they can keep the distance, for example, 2 meter distance, but test them in a TARG van under the awning. And I would really appreciate some of your thoughts about this idea, or maybe you have some other ideas at the end. So that's about it for the first study. So the second one was initially supposed to be a completely different thing. So initially our plan was to run a pilot study that I just talked about, and then use the data from there to estimate the sample size for our next study, which was supposed to be a field study in bars or pubs. But unfortunately, we weren't able to do it because all the bars were shut, and even now they're planning to open up, but it's kind of a bit too late. There's still going to be restrictions. So we completely changed the idea, came up with a different study, which is still under the theme of choice architecture interventions. But so the background for the study is there is some evidence that increasing the availability of healthier options can lead to their increased selection. And it is shown in terms of choosing healthier snacks compared to unhealthy snacks when there is increased availability of healthy options. And same goes for non-alcoholic drinks over alcoholic drinks. Also, labels with calorie information can reduce how many calories people purchase and consume. And although alcohol has almost as many calories as pure fat, provision on calorie information on alcoholic drinks is not yet mandatory, and there are barely any studies that looked at the effects of calorie information on alcohol. Also, a lack of participant motivation may result in reduced intervention effects and overall lower data quality, which is a particular issue for online studies where participants can simply close the web page to withdraw from the experiment if they don't feel like finishing it. However, incorporating game-like features such as narrative or graphics into a task may improve participant engagement. And if it's done correctly, it will do it without negatively affecting scientific value of the experiment. So for the second study, the main objectives were to estimate, first of all, the impact of increasing the proportion of alcohol-free drinks relative to alcoholic drinks on the selection of alcohol-free drinks. And the second one is to estimate the impact of providing calorie information for both types of drinks on the selection of a non-alcoholic drink. And I think it's also important to mention that we're going to look at main effects rather than the interaction between alcohol-free availability and calorie information, because there aren't really any evidence to assume that there will be some sort of an interaction. And the second objective is to estimate the impact of a gamified task compared to non-gamified control on the degree of engagement with the experiment. And I'll talk more about the measures now. So first of all, the design. We will recruit 1,420 UK-based regular alcohol drinkers through Prolific and then run the actual experiment on Qualtrics. And we randomly assign participants to one of the 8 conditions. So we will manipulate the alcohol-free availability, calorie information, and whether the task is gamified. So in terms of alcohol-free availability, there are 2 options. So it's either high alcohol-free availability or low. In a high alcohol-free availability, 75% of drinks that we will present are going to be alcohol-free, whereas in the low alcohol-free condition, only 25% of the drinks will be alcohol-free and the rest are alcoholic. In terms of calorie information, it will either be present or absent. And the task itself is either going to be in the gamified form or in the control form, which I'll show in a minute. So, so the main task was the drink selection task, in which participants were presented with 16 drinks, and we manipulated things within the drinks that were presented. So on the right, we created 4 versions overall, but on the right is just one of them. So this one is high alcohol-free availability and calorie information is present. There are, in all drinks menus, there are always 4 types of drinks. So there are always 4 beers, 4 ciders, 4 wines, and 4 spirits or spirit alternatives. And as you can see in the percentage, in the high calorie, or in a high alcohol-free availability, 3/4, so 75% of drinks in all type of drinks are always non-alcoholic, and also calorie information is present. So in a calorie information absent condition, there were just no column here. And in terms of gamification, so in a gamified task, there were some multiple choice questions before and after the drink selection task that I've just shown. And they were made in a form that it looks like an interactive story in which people choose one of the options which more resemble their typical experience more. So this is, for example, the very beginning of the gamified task, and it just, yeah, gives you the background and asks, who do you normally go to pubs with? And then you choose, and your answer feeds to the subsequent question. And a no gamified control task is basically how online tasks usually look like. So it just asks you to imagine that you're in a bar, and then straight after that you're given the drink selection task, the drinks menu to choose from. So our primary outcome measure was the proportion of participants selecting an alcohol-free drink over an alcoholic drink in all conditions. And we analyzed it using a 2x2 logistics regression with alcohol-free availability and calorie information. And our secondary outcome measure was actually split into two parts. So the engagement bit was split into the subjective engagement and objective engagement. In terms of subjective engagement, we just asked participants 5 questions about their perception of the task. For example, how much did you enjoy it? How boring did you find it? How scientifically important do you think it was? And we're going to analyze it using a one-way ANOVA. Objective engagement actually has 3 components to it. So first, we'll measure how long it takes participants to make their decision on the selection task. And higher response times will indicate higher engagement, because they take longer. If they're more engaged with the task, they'll think their decision through. The second one is the length of a free text explanation, because we're going to ask them to justify why they made a certain decision, about why they chose this particular drink. And the longer the response is, the higher the engagement with the task is. And the third one is number of failed answers to the second attention check. So we'll have 2 attention checks, one at the beginning and one at the end. And we'll measure how many failed responses were on the second attention check between gamified and non-gamified conditions. And the lower the number is, the higher the engagement is. And we're going to analyze objective engagement using 3 separate one-way ANOVAs. So the current situation is the experiment is ready to go live. So everything, Qualtrics is prepared, Prolific is prepared, protocol is reviewed, but we haven't uploaded to OSF yet, just so that I can give a talk today in case there is something that we didn't think about, or like some minor changes that some of you might suggest, so that we don't upload it yet, and we'll do it straight after the talk. That's it, and thank you very much for listening to me, and I would appreciate your thoughts and feedback on our studies. I'll keep it here for now.
Thanks, Jana, that was really good. I really liked your logos.
Thank you. Probably I spent most of the time just coming up with logos when I was making the presentation.
I don't really have any questions because we've obviously talked about this loads, but I don't know if anybody else has. Oh, Jackie does. I don't know if you can you see the chat, Jana? Not for me to read them to you, or for it's easier just to read them yourself.
Oh, I see. Clap. That's nice.
Shall I just jump in?
Yeah,
No
please.
one else has like more important questions, just kind of a couple of methodological questions. One was when you're comparing the different proportions of alcohol on the menu. Will you be? Are you just looking to see whether people? Are you comparing that to kind of the baseline of how much alcohol is on the menu? So are you looking at like the difference between what you would expect if they chose by chance and what they actually choose, or are you just looking at the overall levels of, how often do they choose alcoholic drinks versus non?
So we'll use the low alcohol condition as some sort of a baseline, because sadly that's kind of how drinks menus normally look like in bars. There is like loads of alcohol and there is like some non-alcoholic drinks hidden within the menu. So we kind of use that as a baseline and then see how much it differs when we increase the proportion of non-alcoholic drinks, alcohol-free drinks.
Right. Because it just occurred to me that might be interesting to see if people are basically choosing kind of at chance levels based on, or taking cues, of like, if there's 50% alcoholic and non-alcoholic, will they choose?
Oh, there's actually Anna's study
50% of the time.
that actually used a proper reference condition and then increased alcohol and increased non-alcohol.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Cool.
People disproportionately select alcohol is the answer.
at every level.
Yeah. Even when there's 75% alcohol-free options.
Right. Well, that doesn't surprise me.
No.
My other question, Jana, was what are you doing for the attention checks? What kind of questions? Because I know there's a lot of different types, and there's some, people say some are better than others.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot about attention checks just to make sure that I choose the right one, but then there isn't a right one, so there isn't a right answer. But basically, we ended up using two very similar ones.
Jana, your volume's gone a bit funny. I don't know if anyone else can hear that.
Yeah, it was kind of distorted.
Is it fine now?
Yeah, it's fine now.
So yeah, it's just straightforward. It's really important that you pay attention to the experiment. Please rate 100 for this question, and there is like visual analog scale, and they just put 100.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I've been doing a little reading on attention check questions for other stuff. So I think that sounds like a good baseline that you're not going to probably exclude people who accidentally pressed something. So it's like a conservative one, I guess. Okay, cool.
I guess with the 100 one, obviously you might not like put the slider exactly on 100, not notice it, and maybe we'll just keep like from 95 to 1,000 or something like that.
Right. As long as it's pre-registered.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great.
Any questions?
I think Ange had a question, or at least she raised her hand. We'll put that in the comments in the chat column.
Yeah, I've got one. I just can't turn myself off mute. Thank you, Marcus. So I've got a question around calories. Are you going to do any measure of baseline knowledge of how good their knowledge is of calories before you do this? I imagine not, but
no. What kind of baseline?
So I've just got this sort of theory that probably is another study, but when we were doing, and Anna could probably speak to this better than me, but when we were doing our FIND stuff, the range of kind of guesses around calories was huge, such that some people thought it was ridiculous. Some people thought it was like in a beer would be like all of their calories for the day. They completely overestimated. And I just wonder if there's almost a dichotomy of people who look at calories and actually think it's better than they originally thought, versus those that kind of as shocked by how high they are, because the range that we had, you would get those two groups. So even if you if you're thinking it's 500 calories for a pint, and then you're looking at what's on screen now, you think, well, actually, I'll have the 244 because that's half of what I thought. So I don't necessarily think it's one for your study. I've just got this feeling that there might be differences in where people start from in terms of how they use the calorie info.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we don't have anything really to assess that. Our idea was just that when it comes to alcohol-free drinks, they obviously have much less calories than alcoholic ones, because alcohol itself has so many calories in it per gram. So the idea was that people just maybe go for alcohol-free drinks, because they will see how much they're gonna how much calories they're gonna take if they do it. So even without having a proper knowledge about what calories mean.
But it just strikes me, I think, there's something that we've not really considered, because there's a lot of people come through Find that just seem pleasantly surprised by how many calories there were in a pint of beer. There was lots that were shocked, but there were lots that were pleasantly surprised and said things like, well, I can have 3 more every night then. We've got a bit of an issue. Can I just ask while I'm here, while I've got the floor, if I have another question, you've got multiple attention checks. So just, are you looking at them independently? I just wondered if you've got 2 different if you've got one that was suggesting low attention and one that's suggesting high attention, have you got one that you kind of think is more important? I just struggle with that reaction time, because disengagement, i.e. staring out the window, would also result in a higher reaction time. So I would trust that one less than some of them, kind of the more memory related ones. So I wondered if you're prioritizing any.
We didn't write anything about prioritizing, but that's why we included a couple, so that we can use different ones to get a better picture. In terms of attention checks in general, I mean, probably the most important one would be, I mean, purely subjectively, would be the length of free text explanation, because if people actually put an effort into writing something, it means that they're more engaged with what they've just done in the experiment. But no, there is no like actual scale of which one is more important, which one is less important.
It just might be worth thinking about, because sometimes it does shoot yourself in the foot when you have different measures of the same thing and then you get different things come out of it, and it's what you would do with it, and it's sometimes useful if you thought that ahead of time, so you have a strategy rather than trying to do it post hoc. The reason I said I think the kind of memory ones are better is because you're asking about their engagement during. So the free text, I certainly think it was a proxy, but it wasn't necessarily about engagement, you know, the task before. It could reflect their engagement at that time as well. So there's issues with all of them. So I get the idea of doing multiple and bringing them together, but it's just worth thinking about what you do if they tell you different things.
I'll write it down.
If the plan is just to say what you find, that's fair enough. But if you was going to do anything like sensitivity analysis based on them, that's when it gets trickier.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions, or does anyone have any ideas about what to do with my first study? Wait, let me just.
I had a question, Jana. I should know this probably, but I wondered what sample size you did reach for the sitting standing study.
It was 48. Wait, 48.
So
yeah.
you were supposed to get 48. Sorry, but how many did you get?
Halfway through, so it was 24 pairs. It was like exactly halfway through, if I remember it correctly.
Marcus may shoot me for saying this, but I wonder if it's just worthwhile stopping the study and looking at the data, because that sample size that we chose of 48, it was just an arbitrary figure, really. I think we didn't calculate it, and it's just a pilot study. So I wonder whether it is worth just looking at those 24 rather than trying to do something that may be very different. But that's just a comment, really. Some other people may have ideas about how you could continue the study.
So that study was to estimate a parameter to inform the design of a full trial, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So all that it will mean will be that you'll estimate that parameter less precisely.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. The confidence intervals would just be larger than continuing with something that's going to be quite different, or the world is going to be quite different for a little while.
So that does make some sense, actually. You could, as long, again, with this, you just want to be transparent about that. So you say, well, we stopped the study for obvious reasons, and frankly, everyone's going to understand that in the current context. And we have the data that we have, and that allows us to estimate the parameter that we're interested in, but less precisely than we originally planned. But for all we know, it might be precise enough. And if it's not, well, we still have some information. So I think that would be fine, actually, because it's not a study where you're going to be calculating a p-value and drawing some kind of conclusion from the data anyway.
My only worry is that I don't think that we've recruited. I don't think that it's equal number for each of the conditions. So even though we're halfway through data collection, I don't think, because it wasn't assigning, I think I think it was every 8 people go to.
It should have been in blocks, I think. The randomization should have been in blocks, but maybe it was in
blocks of 8.
In blocks of 8, not quite. But it should be similar, very similar.
If you've got blocks of 8, you won't be far off.
Yeah, I can't remember. It might not be 8.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to be perfect in this kind of design as you go through until you get close to the end in terms of balance. But equally, it shouldn't be wildly off.
Not if you've got 24 and it's a block of 8.
Yeah, and there are only so many choices available in terms of where you go next. So I think, you either wait probably what could be quite a long time before you complete the study, or you look at what you've got now and use that to inform where we go next.
For what it's worth, from an academic point of view, I think you've got enough here to get your MSc. I don't think that would be compromised because of the sheer scale of the next study. That's a complex design with lots of participants. So I think you'd be pretty safe in that respect as well.
So do you think that it's better to just analyze what I have rather than resume the study?
I just don't know when that's going to happen. Resuming testing. It could be for a long time.
Yeah.
And the nature of if this has got a very strong environmental element to it, and I think taking it to the van, I think as Katie said, I think that would compromise it more. It wouldn't actually give you an awful lot, and you've got another level of complexity in there.
You'd essentially have two. By doing that, you would have 2 separate estimates for the parameter that we're interested in 2 separate contexts, which could be useful if you wanted to decide whether or not to then run the full trial in one context or the other. But you couldn't. I don't think you could really meaningfully combine the data given what we're interested in.
Yeah. Okay.
It was just an idea. I think maybe it needs thought through because once we've looked at the data, we can't continue, obviously. So, but that was just a thought. I don't know if anyone's got any other ideas about how you could continue.
No, it's a good thought, and it's one. There are no perfect solutions in this kind of situation, so you need to just think, well, what are all the options, and then of those, which is the one that's best or least bad.
Mm-hmm.
Can I quickly jump in with my question now? Sorry.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, when we were talking about the alcohol choice study, the standing sitting one, the other one, if you are taking into account anywhere how many different types of alcohol they like.
What do you mean?
So could you show the table again where you've got that one? So for example, if I was on a diet and I like only cider and gin and tonic, instead of choosing an alcohol-free cider, I might just choose a gin and tonic, but alcoholic. So the more I like, the more options I have in terms of lower calorie options. So there could still be like if the gin and tonic wasn't available, I might have still gone for the alcohol-free cider. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just wondering if there might be some kind of effects there, because you've got quite a large menu, whereas some places you go, so if you're at a festival, there might be fewer options anyway, and if the lowest calorie option was an alcohol-free one, then you might go for that. So I just wondered if it was something that you had considered or might consider.
No, for some reason we haven't considered it. I think we might have talked about it, but I mean,
what's your exclusion inclusion criteria? Is it that they have to be social drinkers, or?
yeah, they have to drink regularly, so at least once a week, be UK based, be over 18. That's about it.
I think that is a really good point, and I don't think we've got it at the moment, but maybe a good additional outcome would be number of calories selected, maybe.
Yeah, that could probably get around it, to be seeing whether the calories are actually doing anything.
I'm also, sorry, I'm just looking at the table now as well, thinking about Jazz's question. I'm also thinking about how many things are like for like on the table.
Yeah,
so again, like what Jazz is saying, like, because I would not consider myself a drinker. I probably drink, you know, at someone's birthday. You know, I don't drink in my house or anything. So I'm looking at this, and literally, if I take away the idea of calories or whether it's alcohol free or not, the only drink on here that I like and I would buy is the Copperberg mixed fruit. Obviously on here, this happens to be the alcohol free one, but had there been an alcohol version of that, I potentially would have then had a choice between two that I really liked versus one that I like that happens to be alcohol free, and then 15 others that I wouldn't buy regardless of calories, regardless of alcohol free. So I'm wondering if there should be more, or if there is scope, obviously, to have more like for like options.
So the reason why there is only, for example, Copperberg alcohol free and not the alcoholic one is because we manipulate the proportion of alcohol free options rather than their overall amount.
Okay.
So, because for the actual tablet, for the drinks list, I created like an actual Carlsberg Zero, Weiss beer, alcohol-free Weiss beer, and for example, Copperberg alcoholic and Copperberg alcohol-free. So half the people see the alcoholic one, half the people see non-alcoholic one. But because we're manipulating, once again, the proportion rather than the actual amount, we had to exclude some alcoholic ones to include their non-alcoholic counterparts and vice versa.
Yeah. Okay.
Does it just make sense?
Yeah. Just I don't have what should or shouldn't happen. It was just in response to Jazz's comment when I'm thinking about my personal experience. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously different decisions being made based on other things behind the scenes. So it's interesting to know. Thank you, Jana.
Are there any other questions? I can't see the chat. Oh, there is something in the chat. Jackie? You add a page to the experiment.
Oh, yeah, I was just suggesting that you could actually ask people like which options they were considering. Maybe that's not worth doing. Maybe it's too much faff, but you know, it could be something that you try and see. You know, see if this problem is coming up. If they're like, I only considered the one option versus I was considering everything.
You mean, yeah.
Well, even if they ever considered a non-alcoholic option versus only considering alcoholic options.
They are asked at the end to explain their drink choice. So
Yeah.
hopefully that would catch anyone who'd said, oh, normally I'd get X, but there was only this option. So you're kind of capturing that, I think, already. Not quite as specifically, but I think those kind of issues will probably come out there.
Yeah, and even like with my example, that would give me a chance to say,
yeah,
it was the only drink I liked, and then that's really clear, isn't it? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I didn't mention it, but yeah, that's regarding what that we will do a small qualitative analysis of the responses as well.
I also just noticed that I wonder, will you measure whether people were aware that they chose an alcohol-free option if they did? Because if I looked at this menu quickly, I might just be like, oh, Merlot, I'll have that, and not realize that it was, anything special.
Well, I mean, I guess that's also going to be captured by the open text question about the reasoning behind the choice.
I mean, you wouldn't know though if they just said I like Merlot. You don't know if they mean they thought it was alcoholic or they like Merlot so much that they prefer the alcohol-free.
And I mean, at the very, very end of the study, we do the manipulation check asking the participants what they thought was the true purpose of the study. So, and then we'll just do the sensitivity analysis with other participants that actually got the choice. Sorry, got it right. That's what I meant. And I guess because it's relatively noticeable, for example, in the high alcohol-free condition that there are a lot of alcohol-free drinks there. So if participants actually,
I just wonder if you like, if maybe if you really want to make it salient that those are alcohol-free to make sure it says like alcohol-free in the name, and if you want to make it just, if you assume in real life like these would be on the menu as they are now and this is more ecologically valid, then maybe leave it as is, but keep in mind that people might not be aware in some of them. Obviously for like the Copperberg alcohol-free, that's very obvious, but
yeah,
for some of the others, like the wines, for instance, they might not even realize.
These are the existing names.
Yeah, so I'm not saying you necessarily have to change that,
I mean,
but something to be aware of and maybe consider.
It's a good idea, but I don't think we're going to implement it just because, in a way, even if they didn't notice that it was alcohol-free, the fact that they got an alcohol-free one is good for the reduction.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what happens in real life, isn't it? Sometimes people end up going home accidentally with alcohol-free beer, or they've been served it in a bar and not noticed. So
definitely. I worked in a bar for 3 years. That happens quite a lot when people just take a drink and then they're like, "Oh, that's non-alcoholic," when they like nearly finished it and accidentally looked at the brand and they're like, "Oh, that was non-alcoholic."
Yeah. There's an episode of Freaks and Geeks about this as well. Like they switch out non-alcoholic beer. Yeah, I wonder if people are just operating under the assumption that a drinks menu is going to be like the typical drinks menu is 75% alcoholic, and so then if this changed in real life and you had more menus with more non-alcoholic options, once people realize that, they would go back to choosing the alcohol. It might not be completely externally valid that this is how drinks menus normally look. Anyway, just another thing to consider. I'm not trying to tank the study.
Oh yeah, of course, I know. Thank you.
All I was going to say then about the design of the menu kind of thing is that often the non-alcoholic or low alcohol drinks are written separately. So again, in this format, it kind of, I suppose, like you say, if this was the future format and drinks were kind of combined in one menu, you might have, more alcohol drinkers thinking about taking a low alcohol drink because it's in a normal menu, rather than only people who are specifically looking for non-alcohol drinks or low alcohol drinks finding that section of the menu and then making that decision quite intentionally. Because again, thinking if this was in a setting where I was in a social setting and someone said to me, what do you want from the menu? I probably would have just gone, oh, any kind of fruit cider. And because again, there's the one option and it ends up being alcohol free or whatever, then again, it's, if you're in a real life setting, like you're saying, I would never have thought of it and I would have drank it. And like you say, probably got 90% of the way through before you realise. So there's so many factors that play into this, isn't there? But yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, sorry, that also reminded me of something, that you've put the alcohol option first in all of these. Sorry if I missed that and you mentioned it before. Were you going to counterbalance where it comes in the list?
No, but we're gonna do the oh, it's called. Basically, we're gonna record and analyze whether people go for the first options or not.
Right, because I think having it first could also influence the other option. Like you might just look at the first one and be like, Thatcher's Gold, I recognize that. Okay, these are ciders. Or
yeah, we thought about that as well.
There might be effects of it being the first one, so it's possible it could be worth counterbalancing, but maybe you don't have, maybe that's too many factors to balance.
Yeah, we thought about that. If we're gonna look at the order effects, it's probably better to have a separate study looking at the order effects. And with this one, we just once again code what number people go for, what place in the. I hope you got it. For some reason, I can't formulate it.
Maybe because it's Friday afternoon.
Yeah, maybe. And in general, regarding what we've talked about before, about whether people go for Merlot because without noticing that it's non-alcoholic or not, in a way, because once again, choice architecture interventions try to do it by affecting like the automatic, basically by encouraging people to go for better options without them realizing it, and in a way going for Merlot because you like Merlot without checking what the percentage is not against the idea.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm surprised I got so many questions because most of the time it's like really silent, including me when I'm a listener. Like rarely have any questions. So it's just nice to answer.
I think it's nice to, like, when you have a protocol or a study that hasn't been run, it's it feels beneficial to ask questions at this point.
Yeah, I think that's right. When you've prepared, when you've concluded a study, there's less that can be done in a sense. It's just about interpretation then. Whereas when you're designing a study, there's lots of scope for input. But we should probably let you off the hook now. But that was really good, and some good comments and questions and suggestions. So
yeah, thank you very much for them.
And a very clear presentation as well, I thought.
Yay. I'll stop sharing. How do you? No. How to stop? Oh, here is that. Yay.
Jana, it sounds like you live somewhere near the water, because I could hear the seagulls.
No, because they decided to make a nest on the roof right next to mine.
Oh.
And they nearly made it on our roof, and we spent around a month just running outside on the rooftop every 6 minutes or so and fighting with seagulls so they don't make a nest here. Not actually physically fighting, but just screaming at them and like.
I wouldn't recommend fighting with seagulls. It doesn't.
Oh no.
I think they'd
Because
snatch a child if they could.
I just have a beautiful rooftop and I can't go there. I couldn't go the last summer because they made a nest there. So this year I was fighting for it. And yeah. And they were also waking me up at 5 a.m. with screaming, mating, and yeah. I didn't.
Like you're in Cornwall already.
What?
I said it's like you're in Cornwall already.
You're gonna feel so at home in Falmouth, Jana.